Josh Mohland, thanks so much for coming down to Has-Beens.
Yeah, no problem.
If you could let the folks at home and on the internet know, why are you running for Arcata City Council?
Well, I've been up here about 10 years, and during that time, I've decided that I wanted to make this place my permanent home. And I've seen a lot that the council hasn't been doing that I feel is really kind of important for the next 20 years in this town. And I think that just coming into it, I could make a positive change and do a lot that, I don't know, I could bring to the council.
Well, what do you think you could most accomplish if you had 4 years to serve on the Arcata Council?
I think the biggest thing I'd probably do is work on implementing a lot that's in the current economic development strategic plan. We've put a lot of work into the document for the last 8 years, and not a lot has been done, in particular, at least at the speed that I would like to see it happen. So that's kind of been my big push as far as attracting industries that I think would be a good fit for Arcata, as well as revitalizing some of the areas in Arcata that really kind of need some work, particularly like Valley West and Sunnybray and those type of areas. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I'm working on.
Would you say Arcata in the last 10 years, obviously Alder Point Industrial Park has had some success creating jobs, but do you think the downside of that is Arcata's become more and more gentrified, harder for working class folks to be able to afford to live in?
It has. Actually, one of the things I've noticed over the last 10 years is the housing price has gone up. We kind of avoided the bubble, so it didn't pop and go back down. But at the same time, the median income didn't go in the same rate. So we had the housing prices go up, but the median income kind of stagnated about the same. So as a result, the number of people that can actually afford to buy a house in Arcata right now is, I think, hovering between like 2 and 10%, whereas 10 years ago it was about 40%. So that's kind of it's a big concern. And I mean, the answer really is to attract more high-paying jobs and take a lot of the industries that kind of have been neglected and retrain that workforce into something else.
Yeah, what do you think you could do that would be most effective at actually creating those living wage jobs?
The prosperity documents kind of laid out a really good foundation of 6 specific industries that Arcata is a really good fit for. We're looking at niche manufacturing, diversified healthcare, specialty agriculture, and the county's done a lot of work as far as looking at how to attract and bring a lot of these industries in. Arcata specifically, I think we can really harness kind of management training, management consulting, even a lot of high-tech industries. Stream Guys is a good example of a company that started in Arcata, and they're actually located in Bayside now. But kind of taking the energy and knowledge that HSU and its graduates and professors generate and turn that into entrepreneurial ventures. So that's kind of the goal.
Do you think part of the failure of the Arcata Council to do that has been a disconnect economically? Obviously, the net worth of the Arcata Council members put together is quite a bit higher than your average working stiff in Arcata. Do you think those that own Arcata are kind of governing it in their own interest?
I mean, to some extent, probably not. I think the fact that the City Council only pays a really small stipend means that you have to be employed elsewhere in order to accept the City Council position to live on. But as far as there being a disconnect between the council and the economy of the city, I think they've focused on kind of higher end jobs as opposed to, and like more established businesses, as opposed to like say a new entrepreneur or a new business venture that wants to come in. The Economic Development Committee though is really on task when it comes to kind of working with the council. It's just the council has to actually implement what the Economic Development Committee's given up to them. So.
Well, is one part of that disconnect, candidates all across the spectrum over the years say they want a better town-gown relationship between HSU and the city, but other than a committee that meets occasionally between city officials and some administrators, we certainly don't see any, real huge engagement by the student or faculty population in these city committees and so forth. What would you do to actually make that stronger city-university relationship a reality where it's not just a couple of administrators talking to a couple of city bureaucrats, but really across the board faculty and student engagement in the City Hall? Yeah,
it really comes down to dialogue. I worked for the university for a year up in information technology services, and I've seen the kind of disconnect between the city council themselves, or at least like city agencies, and the university. And it's kind of like you've got one hand here, and there's the freeway that divides the two, and there's not a lot of work being done. I think what it comes down to is really looking at what HSU's emphasizing, what their strong points are, connecting with faculty, connecting with staff, and even connecting with students to try to drive more innovation in town. So looking at, what are the graduates looking for when they get out of school? What type of jobs are they going for? Working with the Career Center, for example, to see what type of industries they're trying to get into and whether or not we're meeting those needs locally. And if that's not the case, then we need to work with, there's a whole variety of partners that we could work with to try to attract those type of industries or even start them with the resources we have. So I think what it comes down to is just a lot of dialogue, a lot of breaking down walls, and kind of coming to a consensus, or at least the ability where we can partner together and figure out ways that we can come to some creative solutions.
Well, speaking of breaking down walls, there's definitely been a perception of a lack of responsiveness from Arcata City Hall at various times. And definitely there's been a string of somewhat contentious choices for a city manager. Mm-hmm. It had seemed like the city had turned the corner with hiring a Michael Hackett. Of course, he contracted terminal illness, died not long after coming to town. Yep. And after that, the city chose, basically from the inside with no public search process to speak of, Randy Mendoza, a police chief who had no city manager side of the docket experience as the new city manager. Did that selection kind of disturb you at all, and would you have preferred a more public process?
It was a little odd. I've been working with search committees before at HSU and kind of sat through when we were hiring our CIO up at HSU. I wasn't on the committee itself, but I was sitting in all the meetings. And so I've seen the search process and how it's kind of occurred, and I've also seen search processes where they do hire from within, and there's kind of that, there's the public perspective of, okay, well, why did we hire this person instead of, looking out and saying, all right, who's the best candidate nationwide or whatever. I think what it really comes down to is he doing the job well? How often do we review what's going on? Personally, I didn't pay too much attention to it when it was going on. My ideas and visions were elsewhere at the time, so it's something that I've only seen Mendoza as he is now and not before. So it's kind of my take on the whole situation.
Well, some of the other candidates have suggested the city of Arcata go the direction city of Eureka, cities across the state have gone in, engaging in its own charter creation process and becoming a charter city, which would allow the government more flexibility in engaging the public directly, I guess a more direct democracy sort of process. Yeah. Is forming a charter for Arcata something you'd be interested in?
I think I would only be interested in doing it if we're in a really good year. It's something that does take a lot of time, takes a lot of resources. It's going to take a lot of money just to go through the process of forming a charter, figuring out what's best for the city, going through the process. I mean, at least you're looking at 2 to 3 years solid of that type of work. I think there's a lot that the city can do right now that's kind of more beneficial, particularly in regards to economics and things. If we have, let's say Arcata's bustling in a couple of years, that might be a really cool thing to look at. But as for right now, I don't think it's one of the best things that can be done for the city.
Moving on to public safety, Arcata is not cursed with a particularly high crime rate. However, there have been concerns about police accountability over the years, and in fact 10 years ago when Arcata adopted its current general plan 2020, they called for either the formation of a police review commission or hiring an independent police ombudsman. Neither of those has happened. Those wide-eyed radicals at the Board of Supervisors and the county level just approved the creation of a law enforcement committee. It doesn't have full commission powers, but it does have the power to review policies, practices, and procedures of the Sheriff's Department. And they even invited the local cities to sign MOUs, come on in, appoint a rep or two of their own, and let their law enforcement agencies be subject to the same advisory review process. How do you think you can explain Arcata's failure to make any motion either in the direction of cooperating with the county or in setting up its own independent process? What would you want to do about that, one or the other?
It's kind of odd that the city hasn't done it yet, actually, especially since it was brought up. Arcata is kind of slow at implementing a lot of things that are in the general plan, unfortunately, and I'd kind of like to see that happen as we're really pushing towards that date. It's 10 years away. I think it'd be a really good idea. It's basically worth looking at exploring, but more realistically, actually getting it done, getting it accomplished, seeing what the steps are that we can actually do to get a review commission or a committee or whatever in place. Because I know it's something that a lot of people would have concerns about, especially when it comes to the issues of safety. I know Valley West and Gintoli have been, begging for a police officer finally, and we got one up there. But those type of things only come to light if the council's informed. And having a committee in place where you can have those issues if they get brought up, if there's complaints against officers, if there's concerns about safety, if there's concerns about we need more patrols here, we need more foot patrols there. The only way it can really get done is if there's some mechanism in place where people can kind of bring it in. So I think it's worth doing.
As far as this anti-panhandling ordinance, it was a pretty controversial vote, 3-2 passage earlier this year, and it was reported in the local newspaper that, well, basically police are using it to verbally, push alleged panhandlers into stopping that activity or moving on somewhere else, but that they're not actually actively ticketing people because they're supposedly afraid of civil liberties advocates who are going to throw attorneys and resources at them, drag them into court, and cost the city a lot of money, and probably get the law thrown out. Why would the city adopt a law that it's not even going to fully enforce?
Actually, it's funny because I was one of the people that spoke out at the meeting about it, mostly on the grounds that if it was passed, it would just be kind of a lawsuit target. So it's bait for a lawsuit. And it just seemed way overreaching. Like, I understand the point of why they wanted to pass it, but I think there was not enough research and not enough public comment and a lot of just outcry against it. I can understand it's a very visible population in Arcata. We have a lot of panhandlers, we have a lot of homeless people, we have a lot of transients that pass through. However, creating an ordinance that could potentially open up grounds for a lawsuit didn't seem like the right way to do it. Telling people to move on, telling people to move somewhere else or get out of the visible area, it seems to be an effective way to somewhat manage it, but what it really comes down to is you need a lot of interagency cooperation. You need to have people, like residents, working with businesses, with service providers, with those type of organizations. So it's not you can't just easily slap an ordinance together and expect that to be the fix-all for for panhandling.
And of course, the issue of how the city treats the homeless in general, I didn't even ask about it for the previous two candidates, but it's going to come up anyway as far as public restroom, the issues at the resource center. What's your take on all that?
It's a long process, and I think it actually needs to be addressed. It needs to be dealt with. The problem we've had in the past is there's just a lot of agencies and a lot of history that basically a lot of people don't like each other, and a lot of agencies don't like each other. But we really need to deal with this, and we really need to sit down and get on the same page, or at least if we're not on the same page, start working towards a goal and saying, all right, well, we have a problem here. How do we work with this? How do we solve this? How do we move from this point where we're at right now to where we want to be? And looking at it from a really pragmatic perspective, and not kind of like an idealized, well, this is what we really want, but we're not going to get there. Basically looking at how we can take one step at a time to address these situations. Because we have a homeless problem, we have a panhandling problem, we have a very, the plaza is a central location. Of course people are going to gravitate towards there. The question, or the problem most people have is they like people that don't look a certain way to go there. So yeah, it's something that I think we really need to address, but no one's really, there's several people that are taking up this cause, but for the most part, it's something that, we kind of need to spend some more time working on.